Hey everyone, it's Friday, Aloha Friday, but it's also ESPN Fan Friday Talk Story. And we have an exciting guest this week because, sailing is one of those sports where I'll bet most people have not engaged with or really gotten to know. So one of the great things about Fan Friday Talk Story is we get to talk to some of the UH student athletes from some sports that are maybe not as, for me, this is going to be a learning experience. So joining us today from the co-ed sailing team for the University of Hawaii, Devon Stapleton. And Devon, first of all, thanks for taking the time to be a guest on Fan Friday Talk Story.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
All right, so I'm going to ask a lot of sailing questions, obviously, right? Because I want to learn as much I can about sailing. But tell me a little bit more, first of all, about yourself. You're from Point Richmond, California. So geographically, where is that related to another big city, if you will?
So I'm actually right across the San Francisco Bay from the city. So we can actually see it from our condo. And my parents just recently moved there a couple years ago, but I still call that my home because we moved right across the street from the yacht club, which is basically where I spent most of my time.
Mm.
So if you're if you're in San Francisco, right across the bay is us. So you can see the whole city and the Golden Gate Bridge, sort of like a peek over Angel Island.
Oh, wow. That is so interesting. Now, you mentioned your parents were a member of a yacht club. Is that how it was? And then that's how you kind of got started into getting into sailing?
Yeah, my dad was a Sea Scout when he was a kid. So he was the first one to start sailing through that. And my mom also grew up around sailing. Her dad was Commodore when she was a kid. So a lot of her childhood was in a yacht club as well. She wasn't really as much into it until she met my dad, who actually lived on a boat at the time when they first met. And they actually ended up living on the boat together for a couple years, sailed down to Mexico.
Whoa.
She started racing with him. And so when I was a kid, I think I was 6 years old when I first started sailing boats by myself. But basically my entire childhood was hanging out at the yacht club, going out on the boat with my parents, and eventually sailing by myself.
So, okay, if I heard you right, so you and your parent when you were born, your parents were living on a boat?
No, that
Oh.
was a couple years before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was, when I was first born, we were living in Point Richmond, then moved a little bit further away, like 15 minutes away to a better school district, and then ended up moving back once I graduated high school. So it was mostly just for me and my brother going to school is why they moved away, but that's really
Oh.
where we consider home.
So you said 6 years old is when you first started sailing on your own. So what kind of boat is that? How big is that for being 6 years old to be able to do it by yourself?
So the kind of boat I learned to sail in is an El Toro that actually is only really raced in California and in Hawaii. And it's basically just a bathtub. Like imagine that size with like one singular sail. And I learned at a junior sailing program that was all run by volunteers. So it was a lot of parents, grandparents, people that just love the sport. And it was very like community based. And I sailed at the Richmond Yacht Club junior program I think I started there when I was 7 all the way to when I graduated high school when I was 18.
Wow, my goodness. So basically, if you want to get into, like, if you're a young kid listening to us or watching us, if you have a parent and you have a young kid to get into it, usually these yacht clubs have junior sailing program. So as you're progressing, as you got older through high school, they're hosting or participating in competitions for you to engage in, and that's kind of how it's kind of organized.
Yeah, exactly. It like first starts off where it's a bunch of like bumper boats and everyone's just crashing into each other when you're younger. And eventually like you start, like I want to sail there, and eventually like figure out how to steer, tune your sails so you can get the most wind possible and actually get to where you want to go. And then it like keeps getting more and more advanced, becoming racing, and then you get the tactics while you're racing. And then when I was like more in high school, it was different size boats. So there was lasers that are sort of like longer and skinnier, that are a lot more physical. And so it's a real workout sailing those because you have to hike out to like flatten the counterweight of the wind. So the wind's trying to push the boat over and you got to lean out super hard to help balance that out. Or I did a lot of big boat sailing, so that was a 4-person team where we do like sort of one-on-one match racing practice, which was kind of a unique thing because we were the first group of kids who sort of like got that program going, and it's still going today.
Wow, Devon. Now, educate me on college sailing. So at University of Hawaii, so what kind of boat now is this? How big is that? Is it 1-person, 2-person? What is a boat for University of Hawaii sailing looking like?
Yeah, so in college sailing, we mostly sail FJs or 420s. So an FJ is a 2-person boat that's around, well, I want to say like 15 feet, maybe a little bit smaller. And so there's the skipper, who's the person who's driving the boat and holding the main sheet, and the crew. And the crew's doing a lot of like movement around the boat because a lot of the steering is from your body weight, and then also holding the jib, tuning that. And we also do some single-handed, so it's just 1-person boat. That's more in the fall time. And then actually what we're preparing for right now is a big boat competition in LA that is 8 people on a boat.
Holy cow.
My personal favorite one, what I'm looking forward to the most.
Okay, so how is like for the 2-person boat, right? How are those races organized? So is it like in competition at the University of Hawaii, are you entering an invitational where there's multiple schools and each school might have multiple boats entered into this invitational, and therefore you compete against just one other boat? How is a race or a competition organized?
Yeah. So our competitions are called regattas. It's very prestigious sounding. And we typically go to California to compete because we're part of the Pacific Coast Championship. And so we compete against Washington, Oregon, and California schools, and a couple from Arizona, shockingly enough. And so we're the only school coming from Hawaii, but we typically fly out on a Thursday. We practice wherever we're sailing on a Friday. That's typically Saturday, Sundays racing. And usually how it works is there's like about 20 boats, and you have a start line, a windward mark where you're sailing up to, usually like a leeward mark, and then you're finishing. So it's like a race course, like if you're racing cars or something. You have a start and a finish. Whoever crosses the line first gets first. And then you get second, third, and you do a series of races, so those points get added together. So if you got first place, you got 1 point. Second place, 2 points. And so your goal is to have the least amount of points possible to like stay in first. And we have an A and a B team. So I'm the crew for the A team, and then we also have our B team. So A team will go out and do 2 races usually, and then we'll go and rotate, and B team will go in. So like that's what keeps us very much a team, because we're practicing together, we're competing, trying to keep as competitive as possible, so we're ready for competitions. But then when we're competing on the West Coast or East Coast, we're trying to work together to like get the least amount of points possible, so we can hopefully like be in first or whatever place.
I'm trying to figure this out here because unlike all the other sports teams, right, when they travel, they can bring their equipment. You can put it in a case. You can put it in a container and ship. Are you guys transporting boats all the way to the mainland every time? Because you got to practice here too, right? So how does that all work?
We like to mess with people and say that we sail over or ship the boats.
Yeah.
we borrow people's boats.
Oh.
So it's usually a requirement. Whatever school is hosting the event has enough boats where all the teams can use them. Or for like a lot of the schools that we're competing against, the majority are from California, so they'll just trailer theirs back and forth. But we have like a set of sails. We have our race sails that are like really nice condition, and USC has them, and they bring them to regattas for us. So it's very much a team effort because we're one of the few groups that has to fly in, so it's very accommodating.
Oh, thank goodness, right? Everyone kind of takes care for you guys, because you guys have the hardest logistical challenge. Oh, I would think if any of the University of Hawaii sport teams complains about their traveling, oh, boo-hoo, I think you guys can tell them, stop crying at us, because we have a tougher deal. We don't even get to race on the boats we practice with, I mean, so forth and so on. Is that a big difference, by the way? Is that significant?
It can be. A lot of times to sort of like eliminate like some boats being better than others, just like in one school's fleet, we do rotations. So you like move up a sail number every single time you race, so that you like eventually by the end of the regatta sailed every single boat. So if there's one that's like really slow, it'll even out with the other ones.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
But we stopped doing that a little bit for COVID, but it's starting to go again, which is good because it keeps it like an even playing field in that way at least.
Hmm. You know, Devin, I've asked other student athletes, like, oh, what do you do on your spare time? I've asked swimmers, what do you do in your spare time? I go to the beach. Well, they're in water all the time. I've asked
Yeah.
basketball players, what do you do in the spare time? Well, I like to shoot baskets. Okay. How about you? You're a sailor. What do you like to do on your spare time? Do you like to still go to the water and sail?
Yeah, absolutely. On this weekend, I'll be racing actually two times. We do a Friday night race at a Waikiki Yacht Club, and then on Saturday, I'm racing at Kaneohe Yacht Club on another big boat. And so we're very much involved in the community, especially like if you're more interested in big boat sailing.
Hmm.
And so there's so many opportunities for us to like even outside of UH still keep sailing and like practice even like different skills because it's always slightly different than what we're doing in college sailing. So it's really exciting to like be a part of that. A lot of our team goes surfing too. That's what I like to do in my free time, and we do team surfs every once in a while and take over all of canoes,
Oh.
which some people are not as thrilled about. um, but yeah, a lot of anything on the water, honestly, like surfing, diving, um, and sailing around for fun or racing in Hawaii is my favorite too. One of the more exciting things I got to do this last semester was we actually sailed a boat over to Maui at night
Ooh.
and then raced it back. We sailed it over Thursday night, spent the weekend in Lahaina, and then raced it back from Maui on Monday. And so that's called the Lahaina Return. And we did that on a 35-foot boat.
How many hours did that take? I mean, just to go casually, how many hours did that take?
The delivery, sailing it over took, oh goodness, I think it was like 9 hours, which is really fast. We're in like pretty heavy wind and kind of gnarly waves going over.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a record breaking time to go over for us. And then the race back basically took all day. I think we started at like 8 a.m. and got in around like maybe 4 or 5.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's so much fun though. We got to see, we went around the North Shore of Molokai and saw a whale shark, some false killer whales, a bunch of dolphins, some kind of other shark. I don't know exactly what it was.
Good thing you're on the boat.
Cool. Yeah. Well, when I saw the whale shark, I almost jumped out. I wanted to swim with it so bad.
Oh my goodness. You know, as far as sailing goes in the general sense, I and maybe more common folks, we can connect with things like the America's Cup, right? That's a now when you say I've heard you say big boat. Are those type of boats big boats, or is that another class all of itself?
Those are big, big boats. A lot of like the big boats I'm referring to are like 20 to like 40, 50 feet. America's Cup boats, I think, are like around like 60 feet now.
Oh.
They're always changing. But those are also a little bit different where they have foils on them. So it lifts them out of the water. And so there's just like these little like wings under the water that like propel them up. So there's no drag, nothing like really going against them. So they go really, really fast.
Wow. My goodness. Hey, you know, by the way, so you're from Point Richmond, which is in Northern California, you said by San Francisco. And then there's a lot of schools, obviously, that have sailing teams and things of that nature. So what was it that kind of led you to come here?
I had a family friend originally who went here. He was 3 years ahead of me. And I'd always wanted to live in Hawaii and just really loved the like community feeling here whenever I'd come to visit. And so when I heard that he was going to school here, I was like, oh, like, that's something you can do. Like, that's pretty cool. And then in my senior year, I ended up getting in contact with our coach, Andy Johnson, and came out on a recruitment trip. And I just really loved just like the family community we had going on the team. And also, of course, living here seemed like an awesome option. But really what drew me the most compared to any of the other sailing teams was just like everyone seemed so close, even with like the coaches, and it just really seemed like a great like group to be a part of.
Yeah, that's definitely a great thing to be a part of. But so what's your major? And because you're a senior, so you're going to be graduating pretty soon. What's your major and what's your plans after college?
So I'm studying marine biology, which is always the classic response, like, oh, that's a perfect thing to study.
Yeah.
My hopes after is to stay here. That's the ideal situation, but sometimes with STEM, you can't really be as picky. And I'm sort of like a unique situation where I'm not as much into the research aspect of marine bio, but a lot more of like the education conservation work. So I've done a lot of that actually while being here so far. Worked with Hawaii Marine Animal Response, working with like community outreach from monk seals, sea turtles, a bunch of the shearwater, the seabirds that follow the nests. And actually right now I have a fellowship with NOAA Fisheries, also doing a bunch of community outreach. And I'm working right now on sort of just like a lesson plan or like activities for like 4th grade to like 6th grade, like kids starting to think about like, oh, like what do I want to do when I'm older? And getting them like sort of interested and involved in marine science careers.
Oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks exciting. Great. I love it when people are getting into the educational element of their passion, so to speak. What is the most common question asked of you, like at a party or something, when they find out, oh, I like to sail. I'm on the University of Hawaii sailing team. What's the most common thing they'll say to you?
Most of the time it's like, oh, like that's a sport? Like we have that at UH? That's usually the immediate response. But then it's a lot of like the follow-up, just like, how do you do that? Like, what is sailboat racing? Because a lot of people think of just cruising around, which, don't get me wrong, we love also cruising around on a sailboat, going for a little sunset cruise, but there's a lot more to it that I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily understand. And sort of the unique thing about our whole team is the majority of us teach at like these junior programs I was talking about. We have people teaching at Hawaii Kai Boat Club, Kaneohe Yacht Club. There's a junior program. No one right now, but there's also a junior program at Waikiki Yacht Club. And then also UH often, I mean, right now, all of the like sailing team members, we help out run the Cal 20 classes that are 20-foot boats that are a lot of UH like undergrad, graduate students, and also in the past we've done the Polynesian Voyaging Society volunteers, and we teach them the basics of sailing too, sort of like get people more interested in like just the like deeper aspects of it, just not just cruising around, but also like knowing what you're doing, having that like basic safety, and then like being able to fully enjoy it.
Okay, final question for you is, what is a bucket list item that you would like to do?
Oh, I really want to do the Pacific Cup, which is a race from my home yacht club, Richmond, to Kaneohe Yacht Club, which I consider my home yacht club here. So all the way across the Pacific Ocean. That's my dream. Also, my brother does professional sailing. The cherry on top would be to do it with him.
Wow, that's nice. I'm sure he'd be very happy to hear that too, that he's part of the bucket list kind of path there. That is so awesome. Hey, well, thank you so much for not only educating all of us more about what sailing is as a sport, as a passion, as a recreational, and also the development of our youth can really get into it. But thanks so much for being a part of our episode here on Fan Friday Talk Story. Good luck to you. You're going to be graduating soon. Good luck in the rest of the season, but thanks again for being a guest.
Thank you so much.